is processed by the city's web team. It will be published on our board's webpage for public viewing. All public attendees, this pop-up came up in front of my text, sorry. All public attendees are invited to participate in the meeting at the designated opportunities. If you would like to make a comment or a question, and this is referring to members of the public, who it looks like we do not have, use the raise hand function on Zoom to indicate so, and we will unmute your microphone for you to share. You can also use the chat feature at any time or submit a question using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And for the people who may be interested in joining a board or commission and are watching this via the online link on our website after the meeting, if you have questions, please contact Glenn Ferdman. He is the man in the middle on my screen, possibly on yours, who is the city library director, and he'll make sure your questions get answered. So moving on, we have Councilor Beaty, who has very legitimate emergency need to not hang out through our whole meeting. So we'll put her on first for the councilor's report.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And for people turning in late, we're in the middle of fire season, and I happen to be married to one of the fire commanders for the Army. And so the state has been clearly has activated the National Guard. And so there will be a quick move in our household the next couple of days to make sure he's ready to go, and our family has to be prepared and ready for him to go. During council last night, I talked a lot about people needing to prepare for fires. And by the time they're watching this, hopefully this is a thing of the past. But we have a lot of military National Guard in our community, and firefighters, our friends at TVFNR, have been working almost 48 hours straight on the fires with very little breaks in sight. And people have been texting me all day asking how they can support the community locally. There's a lot of people being housed at Mountainside High School, about 40 families we know that were evacuated out of Chehalem. So there is a need that they've asked for food. They say they're good through today, but follow their social media so you could follow along. There might be an opportunity where, we know the Red Cross can't get there. They're spread too thin with other emergencies. So Beaverton's going to do what Beaverton does and take care of our own community. So that's a really great way to go. You should definitely download the Pulse Point app from TVFNR. It will track your location and send you emergency notifications of evacuations if you fall into that area. This fire season typically happens in Southern Oregon or far, far away. This is happening in Beaverton, and this is real. People are losing their lives, their animals. They'll be staging at the Washington County Fairgrounds, so that's another place that you can check in. You need to make sure that your own families are in order. That way, in the event that you need to leave, having growing up in Southern California and living through many, many fires and being evacuated, things change in a heartbeat, and you could go from level 1 to level 3 in less than 20 minutes and be ready to go. The other thing I really strongly suggest that our community do, if you have a National Guard family or a firefighter family in your neighborhood, checking in with them is immensely important. We happen to have a neighbor that has, they're both firefighters and we're both activated, and we became part of their emergency chain for their children at midnight 2 nights ago because they got all alarmed, everyone was called in. And so there's nothing worse, having been a combat veteran and having been a spouse that has both been deployed and been at home, it's really hard to concentrate and do your job when you're worried about your family. And so that's a really low key ask for community members. If you have National Guard or firefighter, TVFNR or Portland Fire, even in your neighborhood, just checking in to see if there's something you can do to support those families so those heroes can be out there protecting us. That's not what I intended to talk about, but it's really close to our family happening in real time. So that's always really important to me. A couple updates from the council. As I'm sure you guys know, we have a new charter that passed in May, moving our form of government from a strong mayor to a city manager form of government. So the council is underway on laying the groundwork for that. As you can imagine, this is a very massive shift, and most cities around us operate in this fashion, but it does take the operating power and shift it in the elected body from the mayor to the city councilors. We added, as you know, a 6th council seat, which I wrote into my comments last month, so this probably isn't new. It's a 3-way race. There are some great candidates in that race. It's a great opportunity for us to expand diversity on our council. I'm excited to watch the outcome of that race happen in real time. So come after the election, we'll have an idea of who the mayor will be, who the next city councilor will be in that seat. And the city council will begin their work on hiring an interim. We collectively decided to hire an interim rather than a city manager right out the gate. That way we have a new city councilor that was elected in May, Allison, and we'll have a new councilor in the 6th seat. And since they should be part of the decision-making for this new form of government, we are opting to hire an interim city manager that would take over immediately on January 1st when everyone is sworn in and that office starts. And then we would begin the process for hiring a full-time city manager. It's also good, like no one wants to be the first person out of the gate. You know, in the Army, we call it the door breacher. When you're the door breacher, like you're usually the one that it's not the best position to be in. And so I think we would suffer a little bit trying to hire a city manager right out of the gate. I mean, we've been a strong mayor form of government since 1981. So this will be the first time we've moved to this. So having an interim makes sense. It will allow us time to do an analysis of departments because, you know, for me personally, I have a master's in organizational leadership and I consult in this where I help people understand organizational structures. We have some managers that have 10 to 12 direct reports. Like that's not efficient. It's not the best way to recruit and train employees. No one ever gets enough one-on-one time, and especially younger, you know, I'm a millennial employees like to have constant contact with their boss. When you have that many people, this probably happens a lot in the library. You got a ton of people over there. It happens in our court. So we'll be able to go through and look through some of that stuff and have it ready for the new city manager to take over. And so that is all happening, and we're hiring another judge. So most of you know that we just went through a process looking for 2 judges. We found an amazing judge in Judge Miranda Summers. She was officially sworn in on Tuesday night. She came from the Human Rights Advisory Commission. So she was a city volunteer, really engaged. Her and her wife live here in the community. She is an amazing asset. She had been a pro temp judge in our courts for some time. We didn't end up selecting a second judge of that hiring pool. And for us, like this is important. We're looking at a lot of transition for racial justice, looking through a different lens. And part of that chain of looking at community safety has to be the criminal justice system as well. And most people don't even realize the city has their own court of record and the city council hires the judges. They're not elected, they're appointed. So really who you vote for city council is really impactful in a lot of categories. The judge we had before Judge Britton was here for 25 years. So this appointment could be a very lasting appointment for a judge in our city. And so going back out, and we narrowed the list last night. I can't publicly say who was on it, but we had about over 25 applicants, which was bigger than our last round. So we narrowed it down. We'll be interviewing people off of that list, and we are including members from DAB, the Diversity Advisory Board, HRAC. There's court employees, represented employees from the union. I believe we have someone from the DA's office, plus members from the chamber. So we'll have 4 or 5 different panels with really impactful, like a lot of different community voices. That was really important to me. In a weird way, I've hired 3 judges on my 6th year in city council. I hope this is the last time we have to do this for some time. It is intensive and really like trying to find a good fit, because it's not just about finding the perfect judicial judge. It's about finding the perfect judge that fits in the system that's operating now and fits in with our lines and visions for racial issues going forward in the city. And so there's a lot of things we're doing right now. It's a really crazy time. Also, beyond COVID, beyond the fires, there's also a lot happening with public safety. The council has been having a lot of public comment, sometimes up to an hour a council meeting, asking us to look at community policing. I introduced 8 Can't Wait 13 weeks ago. It feels like 7 years and 11 minutes at the same time. I'm not sure how that happens. What we couldn't come to a conclusion on the council was to adopt 8 Can't Wait. What we pushed to do was hire a consultant. So the consultant is wrapping up and bringing us next Tuesday night at city council. So I'd highly recommend you turn in. She's met with 8 or 9 different community groups, really looking at reaching out to our BIPOC partners in the community. She's going to present us with a report. I am not going, a lot of this information is out there. We have a 200-page document for the Coalition of Communities of Color already wrote for us. What we're hearing from a lot of community members is they feel tokenized, that we continue to ask them to come in and talk about their trauma and talk about policing over and over and over again, to the school district, to us, to everyone. So what I think will happen is we'll hear the reports and either we'll be like, we're so awesome, pat ourselves on the back and move forward. Or if the council truly listens, what I think is going to happen is our community is in pain, and members of our community, my interaction with police as a white woman is vastly different than young Black community members. And what I hope is that we listen, we take all of that information into account, and we make decisions about community policing going forward. I know I'm interested in looking at mental health. I'm interested in looking at school resource officers. We've had presentations about school resource officers that were very high level, didn't really get into a lot of weeds and details. We continue to say this is a school district decision, but the city funds $1 million a year or more of school resource officers. So this is also being funded by city taxpayer dollars. So we should have a say in how school resource officers operate too. So that's kind of where we are. Everything's burning down, racial unjust, COVID. That's it. Oh, new city manager and a form of government. I mean, it's like totally easy to be an elected official in Beaverton right now.
Okay, any questions for Lacey?
Not one question out of all of that? Like everyone's like, cool, let's read the,
So
what's going on
comprehensive,
next?
Councilor. I think
Okay,
they're all
well, we'll
taking
let
it
you
in.
get on with your pressing matters then, and thanks for coming.
And hey, and sometimes it's hard to ask questions in a public setting. That's a lot. Not everyone agrees with me politically. I try to make it as apolitical as possible, but it's challenging to do that. I'm going to type my personal cell phone number in the chat here. If you want to call and ask me a question that you didn't want to ask with everyone else, just send me a text. We'll connect. I'm happy to answer any questions. If you want to tell me I'm full of BS, that's fine too. Call me. I think transparency is really important. You should be able to call and rep out and to talk to people that represent you. So I know I also just said I'm Greek. I talk really fast, and that was a lot of information. So you can also email me. Happy to chat with any of you guys about any of this stuff.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
The next
Good luck with
item.
everything.
Yes, good luck to your husband.
Thank you.
The next item is the approval of minutes from our July meeting. If you recall, last month we didn't have the July minutes available to review before or during the meeting, so we need to approve them tonight. So can I get a motion to approve them from somebody who attended the July meeting? Kathleen?
Yeah.
Okay, can I get a second?
I can be second.
Sarah?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Well, I wasn't at the July meeting, never mind. Oh, no, I was at, okay, never mind, okay.
You were there, I think.
Yeah, July I was, right. That's right, I wasn't at the August.
Right, so
I vote
the
aye.
July minutes have passed. We move on to the August minutes, which we also received from Kristin. Can I get a motion to approve the August minutes?
This is Sarah.
Okay, can I get a second? May, okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I think that's, Brad can't vote. We have approved the August minutes. And the next item is the recruitment process for the city's boards and commissions. As I'm sure most of you know, the city does, well, all of you know that the city does a very aggressive recruiting campaign every year to attract new members to its boards and commissions, including this one. We have no current openings on our board for a full-time regular member. We do have openings for 1 or 2 alternates. We would be very happy to add at least 1 alternate. So if you know somebody you'd like to recommend, they can apply on the city website. The city has asked us to do it's a substitute for the annual fair that they have, the open house. Last year, Kathleen and Glenn and I represented the board and the library at the open house. We talked to quite a few people. People had an opportunity to shop for their choice of how they would like to make a contribution to the community. Obviously, the city can't do that this year. So we have the alternate method. And since we have no guests that are meeting tonight, we're going to work from the assumption that people may be watching this replay on the city website, because the meeting is being saved to the board web page on the library web page on the city website. That's how that works. So the city has asked me to cover several matters, which I will do, and this will be participative, so you have to pay attention. First thing to do is to discuss the board's mission. And our mission is to promote the development of library service in Beaverton and to consult with the library director on matters pertaining to the library and to make recommendations to the mayor and council regarding matters pertaining to the library. Our supporting goals are to periodically review library policies, review the library budget annually, become familiar with the city budget process, and participate in the annual budget review. Promote facilities and services for the library that meet state and national standards for space, collections, and library-related services that also meet the reading and information needs of the public, and to be involved with long-range planning for the library. And that last item at the moment primarily refers to our strategic plan, which we implemented several years ago, and we are monitoring staff implementation of that plan, which has thus far been very successful and very productive. The next thing we're going to do is introductions. I know this sounds silly since we know each other, but I'll go around clockwise as you appear on my screen, skipping Kristin, who's not a board member, and ask you to introduce yourself, and you can say why you applied to be on the board, what you enjoy about being on the board, how long you've served, anything you'd like to mention, starting with Andrew.
Hi, I'm Andrew Love, and I've been on the board for the past year, and the previous year I was an alternate. And I joined the library board in order to just support the library, and I'm a huge fan of the library system, and I want to make sure it succeeds.
And Kathleen.
My name is Kathleen Allen. I joined the board, this is my second year as a full-time board member. I joined the Library Advisory Board to be an advocate for my local library, as well as to further my knowledge of library services.
And Kathleen is our current vice chair. Sara.
I'm Sara. I have been with the board for 4 years. I just wanted to represent as a community member in the library and to bring most useful for the community and make library listen what a community member wants for them. Thank you.
Thanks. Brad.
I'm Brad Schrock. I was interested in the library board to do something where I felt like I was involved in the community, and it was something that I thought promoted a good cultural thing, and also had a lot of good influences on children and youth, and I was interested in all those things.
And Mei.
Hi, I'm Mei. I joined the board for about 4 months only. I'm very green at this moment. And I moved to Beaverton, and then I joined the library as a volunteer, as I want to have more participation in the community. That's why I want to do more voluntary work, like joining the board and some other services. I enjoy it.
Very good. And I know that several of our board members are also volunteers, and that's one way several members have found out about it. And if you're interested in volunteer opportunities, you can contact Jennifer Johnson at the library. She manages that program. Obviously, under the current circumstances, we have no new availabilities, I assume, to volunteer, but that will hopefully change soon. If you have any questions regarding what the library board does or what the process is for getting onto the board, please again contact Glenn Ferdman through the library webpage. You can also fill out an application to be on the board at beavertonoregon.gov/get-involved. beavertonoregon.gov/get-involved. Okay, we can move on to other business now. Anybody have anything they'd like to add to that? Okay.
John, did you introduce yourself?
I didn't, I should. I'm John Henshell. This is my 5th year on the board. My second term, because of term limits, we can only serve a maximum of 2 3-year terms. We're selected for 3-year terms, which I should have mentioned. And this is my 2nd year as board chair. I got involved because, like Andrew said, and I think Kathleen, probably everybody, I love the library. Usually when I do something like this, it's because there's something I want to change, and this is my way to get involved. But this is an exception. This is something where there was nothing that needed fixing. It was something I felt, because I had worked in libraries, that this is how I could make my greatest contribution to the community at the moment. So I'm very happy to do it. I really enjoy serving. Anybody who's interested, I think you will too. Our meetings are probably more fun live than they are online when we get to do that again. On to the next item. If you're a card holder from the Multnomah County Library, you got an email message a few days ago from Bailey Elke. Did I get that right, Kristin? Okay. She is the director of the Multnomah County system. And you'll remember I forwarded links to articles in the Oregonian from union members and from the director regarding possible layoffs at the library. And the message from the director says they will now be able to avoid involuntary layoffs through a variety of strategies, which I think is good news, even good news for the taxpayers. And so nobody will be laid off involuntarily. There will be some voluntary layoffs. She also highlighted all the things that Multnomah County is doing during the period while their buildings are closed, as ours are. And I am really proud of the fact that they aren't doing anything we aren't doing. They had links to most of their activities, including their virtual programs, and I looked to see what they were offering. And it was a skimpy list compared to what we're doing. Mostly all they're doing is children's story times. So I think we can be really proud of that, but it also gave me an idea, just because we're all library geeks and we're home more than usual. I'm sure libraries all over the country are doing virtual programming. So, if you're interested in doing something for fun, learning something, lectures, maybe music presentations, check big city libraries around the country. There's probably a lot of exciting things going on. Public forum, we have no members of the public here tonight. However, I did get a message from the city regarding something that we have discussed at length as a board and don't need to discuss again tonight, which is what about political candidates and people representing ballot measures who want to speak at our board meetings? And the city has established a process for that at this point. And I think this being an unusual year, and because we only have one more meeting before the November election anyway, I think if we have somebody who is interested in appearing and are willing to keep their comments to a couple of minutes, including questions, as we allow for the public forum, that would be pretty acceptable, and we'll follow the city's protocol for inviting their opponents or people representing the opposition in a ballot measure. For two reasons, I think this is a good idea. One, because people can't do the normal door-to-door campaigning. And we aren't getting the news coverage that we normally get either. So I think it can be helpful to everybody if we do have a candidate who wants to appear. But that would be the exception for this particular season. We can now move on with all of our usual business, I think, which next would be the partner reports. Glenn, has the teen council started meeting again this year? Or will that wait till we're open again?
You know, John, I'm not sure exactly. I know they were, I believe, holding elections recently, but let me follow up and I'll find out. Okay.
Because we can, whoever the representatives are welcome to come, of course, to our October meeting at this point. And I know their activities have to be considerably curtailed right now, but perhaps they have some plans. I don't know if they're continuing with their podcasts in these circumstances or what. So it'd be nice to have an update. And Kathleen, I'm sure you have probably not been too involved with their friends recently, but maybe you have something new to tell us.
I do. I have not been too involved with the friends, but thankfully I'm still on the email lists. And so I get the big news that they send on the email. So I've been keeping abreast of that. So one thing that I can tell you is that they have submitted an application to use some space at the Griffith building. Now that the Griffith building, now the public safety building has been completed and the police have moved, the Friends have submitted an application to take some of that space for storage, because that's an issue with the current book corner building, is that there's a lot of books and they're looking for some extra storage. So I know that they've submitted an application. That's all the news I have there. I can also let you know that Amazon sales are carrying the day. So because we can't do any book sales right now, because obvious reasons, the pop-up sales that they've been doing on Saturdays, as well as Amazon sales, have been really robust. And so they are still behind monetary-wise what they hoped to be for the year, but thankfully they're making up some of that through Amazon sales and thrift books and Abe Books and all of the other online sales portals that they've been using.
Very good.
Yeah, and I can give everybody exact numbers if you'd like them.
You can unmute yourselves, remember. Okay.
Yes, Glenn.
I just have something to add, if I may, Kathleen, to your report. And that is the city's Director of Public Works, Chad Lynn, sent round to the department heads some photographs of some downed trees in and around Beaverton that the department took care of or disposed of. And the last photo was of a residence of a property, a tree, a fairly large sized tree that had been blown down in front of a property. When I looked at the photo, the property looked very familiar to me. And then I noticed two blue bins in front of this property, which was a single residence painted yellow. And I quickly realized that that was the site of the book corner property. And lo and behold, there was a fairly good sized tree that was blown down by the storm on, I believe it was Sunday evening. So when I realized that, I quickly emailed Roger Tobin, the Friends president, to inquire if in fact it was true that it was the Book Corner property, and if so, were there any injuries or damage to the building, etc. And very quickly, Roger responded and informed me that fortunately, yeah, he confirmed that it was in fact the Book Corner property. He also mentioned, thankfully, that in spite of the fact that this rather large-sized tree did in fact come down right in front of the property, there was no damage to the building and there were no injuries.
Thank goodness.
Indeed.
Yeah. No, we've got a Christmas tree-sized fir branch in our backyard. And even looking out now, I mean, the wind here is still really strong. So
I'm more concerned about the color of the sky. It's pretty spooky.
It is. Were you here when we had the eclipse a few years ago?
Sorry. Who?
Were you here when we had the eclipse a few years
I was.
ago?
I drove down to Salem to see Totality.
Yeah, because it looked very similar to this to me. And the ground color, the whole eeriness of it was very, very similar, I think.
Yep.
But let's hope the next one's entirely natural. We'll move on to the foundation report.
Yes.
Do we have anything, Glenn?
Yes, I'm happy to provide an update, John, for the group. And that is the foundation board met last week, as is their wont. And they have a new board member, someone who will be familiar to many members of this board, and that is former board president Gautam Kattapalli, is the newest member of the Library Foundation Board, which also should not come as a complete surprise because from what I understand, there is a history of former Library Advisory Board members who have termed out and who then become members of the Library Foundation. So I want to plant that seed for when the time comes for any Library Advisory Board members. Once you term out, there are other opportunities available, including the Library Foundation, as well as the Friends of the Library. So the Foundation Board now is up to 3 full-time members. They're still interested in growing that board. So we have our Jennifer Johnson, our volunteer manager, who is in the process of trying to identify additional recruits. And if any of you as members of the advisory board know of anyone in the community whom you think would be a good fit for the foundation board, please let me or Michael Wong, the foundation president, know. We'd be very happy to speak with them. I think, as I mentioned the last time, the board has the benefit of some research assistance being performed by Jill Adams, one of our members of the library reference team. She has been doing research on library bookmobiles and mobile Wi-Fi hotspots, as the foundation board has identified library bookmobiles as a fundraising target for their efforts in recognition of the benefits and the value that a bookmobile would provide to the community. Once Jill completes her research, she will then be tasked with doing some research, additional research on behalf of the foundation, specifically looking at grants and other fundraising opportunities, and also perhaps assisting with the mining of the Donor Perfect database to try to identify additional donor opportunities for prospective donors to the foundation. The next steps in the process are to get a bit more granular in terms of the costs for a bookmobile. The foundation was presented with a list of different types of bookmobiles, including everything from a van to a full-fledged truck, 40-foot long truck, and decided to go with a proof of concept involving the purchase of either a new or a used van. And one of the follow-ups is we'll be reaching out to the city's manager of their fleet vehicle system to see if there is a recently decommissioned or about to be decommissioned van that could be used for that purpose, along with some customization to serve as a bookmobile. So stay tuned on next steps. Oh, and finally, the foundation board has agreed to make the December appeal letter, the focus of the December appeal letter, to raise funds on behalf of the new bookmobile.
Good. Any questions for Glenn regarding foundation? Okay, we'll move on to the director's report. And you've got a whole lot of time, Glenn.
Very good, John. So I can speak slowly for a change, which is good because the air quality inside my home is not as good as usual, as you can imagine. So I'm hoping my voice will not give out. First thing I'd like to do before I jump into the director's report is to share a photo with you all that I just received today. Can you all see it?
Yep.
That photo, some of you may recognize, and I know Sarah will, is the exterior of the Murray Shoals branch. What is unique about it is, if you'll notice in the background is you'll see a couple of library staff standing there with their appropriate face coverings and some signage in the foreground and tables, etc. And this is a photo from earlier today when we launched the initial pilot, curbside pilot at the branch. As I've apprised this board, we have been doing curbside service at the main library location since June. And one thing I'd like to share about that is at the end of last month, at the end of August, we surpassed 10,000 items that we have provided at the curbside since June at the main library. And that was done while serving approximately 5,500 patrons. So an average of about 4+ items per patron. And we are now in the process of piloting curbside at the branch. And the initial rollout, or as part of the pilot, is similar to what we did at Maine. We will be calling selected patrons who have items on hold to inform them that they can come by the branch selected hours this week and the next week to pick those items up. Eventually, we will be going to what we're referring to as a hybrid model, which will involve both scheduled appointments as well as walk-up opportunities for patrons to pick up materials that they have on hold. So we're very excited about it. This is the first time we'll be serving patrons in this capacity at the branch, apart from doing some tabling out front to provide summer reading prizes. Staff there are very excited. They were very involved in the decision-making and the planning for this. And we're very excited to be piloting this and to see the response and to growing the service over time, to be expanding the number of days as well as the number of hours. Until now, patrons who had items on hold at the branch had to come to the main library in order to pick them up. Now, for the first time, they'll be able to pick up those items that they've requested be delivered to the branch at the branch itself.
Thank you, Glenn. That will be a super opportunity for me. Instead of driving me through all the way to the city, branch is the very nearest to me. And I'm always sad when I drop the books to see that door closed. Now it will be awesome to see them open and to get some more books. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback, Sarah. I know we have, like you, we have a lot of very dedicated patrons at that branch. And we know that they will be thrilled with the ability to come and pick up their items at the branch.
That's true.
Okay, let me move on to the bulk of the director's report. Just give me a moment. Okay. I think last meeting I reported that we have been providing support for approximately 10 little free libraries in underserved areas of Beaverton, including one in which we actually helped to repair the little free library. We replaced the plexiglass on the door and a hinge and got a nice shout out from the principal at the school, which was the site of the little free library, as well as replenishing the books. And so that was something that we only recently began. I think I also reported last time that we were about to roll out, or maybe had recently done so, of our postponed grab and go collection, which was initially scheduled to launch at the Beaverton Transit Center back on March the 23rd, but was placed on indefinite hold as a result of the pandemic. Well, we recently decided to deploy that collection in front of the main library on a mobile bookshelf. And I'm pleased to announce that that has met with a good deal of success. And we are averaging 26 books that have been grabbed from that shelf on average per day. And that's with very little fanfare, very little advertising, but it's in a fairly prominent location, particularly on farmers market days, where we see an increase in traffic in front of the library. And until recently, all of the books in that collection were adult fiction and nonfiction. And we will soon be, if we haven't done so already, be adding some children's books to that collection. And as mentioned, those books come from a combination of donated books. The friends are helping us with those now, and also books that are withdrawn from the Beaverton City Library collection. Back to the curbside, over at Maine, as mentioned, we reached an important milestone after 2 months of service. Just a reminder, we are doing that 6 days a week, with the exception of Monday. That's our planning day. Currently, curbside service is by appointment at Maine, and we hope to be migrating to a hybrid service there in the coming weeks to allow for folks to also accommodate walk-ups in addition to scheduled appointments. We continue to do book bundles, 14 different categories of book bundles for children and teens, which continue to be very popular. Speaking of continuity, as John referenced in his report, we continue to provide a very robust array of virtual programming for residents of all ages. And that said, we've discovered that the virtual programming has allowed us to increase our footprint, so to speak, and our reach in the community, and extend that beyond our service population in Beaverton and the surrounding county to include other states. And Kristin, was it you who were telling me that we have some regular participants in some of our programs, and I can't remember if it was including the Song Circle from other states?
Yeah, I definitely. I've gotten a few people from Washington State and California come to the Song Circle, and they're generally like friends or the brothers or sister of one of the regulars, and it's been really sweet to see that expand that way. Yeah, and I know like for story times, like the grandmother can come even though she lives in North Carolina, and it's been really exciting.
Thank you. That has been an unanticipated benefit of going virtual with all of our programming. It has allowed us, as I mentioned, to extend our reach, and also, as importantly, for other participants, in some cases, as Kristin pointed out, family members to join family located in different parts of the country or world for that matter, to join and participate in a story time or other program simultaneously with their loved ones. So this was an unanticipated consequence, but one that we're obviously thrilled to have learned that is happening. And I think, as mentioned, we anticipate that even post-pandemic, we will no doubt continue with certain services and programs that we have developed during the pandemic period, including a certain amount of our virtual programming, as well as some form of, potentially some form of curbside service because of the convenience factor that we anticipate there will be a significant demand for us to continue doing. I think I mentioned on a recent meeting that I've been meeting on a monthly basis with peers at some of Oregon's largest public libraries, including Salem, Eugene, and Corvallis, in addition to Hillsborough, each month. And I believe it's the library in Corvallis that at the beginning of the pandemic, they launched a home delivery service. This was in lieu of doing a curbside service because they did not have the capacity to do both. So they opted to go with a home delivery service, which has proven very popular with their residents. And on a recent call, their director indicated that due to the success of that program, of that service, they anticipated that they would probably continue with it in some fashion, even post-pandemic. So there are some silver linings that have been identified and will no doubt come out of this pandemic period insofar as additional services and programs that we will be providing and continue to provide our service populations as a result of the need to become creative in terms of how we deliver services and programs, and based on the response by the community. So those are just a couple of examples of that. Summer reading program is drawing to a close. You recall there were, just like last year, we did this for the first time. In addition to a summer reading program for children and teens, we also did one for adults. This year's theme was Read for Trees. And that program, in spite of its limited nature, because of the all virtual programming aspects. We're still quite successful in the numbers. I don't have the exact numbers on me at the moment. I will provide them in the future once they're available. From what I understand, we're quite good. And in terms of the number of signups, in terms of the percentage of participation, as well as also judging by the number of families and their children who came to claim their prizes, either in front of both library locations where we were tabling and providing them, as well as at the curbside. So we were very pleased with the overall response. And that our Youth Access Services teams also distributed more than 1,000 books this summer at 10 free food distribution sites in conjunction with the school district. So we're very proud of them for doing that. And funds for those books, by the way, came from the Ready to Read grant. We've also been working with the elections department at the county level for providing ballot boxes at both library locations. That will occur. We'll have ballot boxes set up with a tent in front of both library locations. I believe it's starting approximately a week before the election through the election day itself. And they will be staffed by library volunteers. Speaking of volunteer opportunities, you know, you mentioned that, John, earlier in the meeting, and also library staff. Because those ballots, as you can imagine, need to be staffed the entirety of the time that they are in front of the library to make sure there's no tampering. So we're working closely with the county to make that happen. The county is also going to be installing a permanent ballot box along Hall Boulevard on the west side. So that's the farmers market side of Hall Boulevard, is yet another way in which voting members of the public can easily cast their ballots. And we've been working with the county on that. In fact, they contracted the design of the ballot box with a local architect who recently submitted his plans for the ballot box for our review. So we were grateful for that opportunity, and very excited to be helping to get the vote out this year, in spite of the fact that neither library location is physically open to the public.
And for anybody who doesn't know, we normally have the drop boxes for ballots in the library locations.
I'm sorry, John, can you repeat that, please?
For anybody who doesn't know, we normally have the voting drop boxes in the libraries.
Yes. What I'd like to do now is also go back to sharing my screen. I'd like to share some statistics with the board. Some reason, show all windows. There we go. Okay. Here we are. Okay, can you all see my screen? Okay, what I'd like to do is just share some statistics, combined statistics for both library locations for July 2020. So comparing July 2020 with the previous year, July 2019. Bear in mind, of course, that July 2020, all of the services that I'll be reporting on are being done for the most part on a virtual, some type of virtual or limited basis. So to wit, at the top of the chart, the table, of course, is our total gate count, which, as you would expect, the total for July 2020 is 0, because we are not admitting any members of the public into the building, with the exception of our computer lab. And I can provide that data separately because we're tracking that and separately. But apart from that, we are not admitting any members of the public into the library building itself, so hence that total is 0, compared to last year, where it was more than 48,000 patrons for the month of July. However, we have recently started doing library card registrations once again. And for the month of July, I'm pleased to report that we processed 152 of those card applications, which is approximately a quarter of what we did last year, which I hasten to say is still quite an impressive feat, considering the restrictions and limitations on our ability to do that. So kudos to the staff for making that happen. Another metric I'd like to report on is total internet user sessions. Now that we have our computer lab up and running, I do have this data point to share with you, is that whereas for a reference point, last year we had close to 6,000 internet user sessions at the libraries. This year, we have a total of 45. And bear in mind, we are currently providing computer access at the main library location only, and just 2 days a week, 4 hours per day. So we're hoping to expand that, but still very proud of that number, as our current system is each user who schedules an appointment to access a computer is limited to a half an hour in order to maximize the number of people that can take advantage of the service. Jumping down to reference transactions, this is a number that's quite impressive under the circumstances, is we are running at about 45% or more, between 45 and let's say 47% compared to last year, in spite of the fact that we're doing it in a virtual capacity alone via phone and via email. So we responded to more than 2,000 reference questions in July of this year. Interlibrary loans are also back. And we processed 132 back in July compared to 294 the previous year, loans that is to other libraries. And we processed 93 ILL requests to request items from other libraries compared to 285 last year. Speaking of programs, an astonishing statistic is that the number of adult programs actually more than doubled in this year, in July of this year, compared to last year. And one of the reasons for that is lack of competition for meeting spaces. The fact that we are delivering all virtual programming means we don't have to reserve, we're not bound by a physical space. So again, this points to an unanticipated consequence, in this case a benefit for our programming, which in the case of adult programming has enabled us to do even more of that. We have more staff that we can throw at that activity. Interestingly enough, however, the number of participants is less than last year. So we're averaging approximately 9 participants per adult, virtual adult program, compared to last year where we were averaging more than 30 participants for on-site programs. And bear in mind, those on-site programs, they range from everything from a brewery festival, which attracted north of 500 people, story slams attracted close to 200 people. So just something to keep in mind in terms of the numbers of participants. In terms of youth services programs, we did approximately 60 or 70% in July of 2020 compared to the previous year. And one of the reasons for that is we have pulling book bundles and helping to disseminate free
Glenn, you're frozen.
Yeah.
We've lost his video too.
Oh, you
We
have?
have.
I just have him frozen.
I lost his video
I
too.
think,
I
I think he
There he goes.
probably dropped off and is getting back.
Oh, there
He's
he
going
is.
to
He's back.
reload.
He's back, but he's muted.
like that.
There we go.
Hi, everyone. I apologize for that. I did get a message that my internet connection was a bit unstable, so I'm not entirely surprised. Let me go back to sharing my screen and hope that I won't lose you all again. Okay. I don't know if you heard, but the last thing I mentioned was we're averaging about 25 participants per youth services program, which is still very respectable. And then youth outreach, as you would expect, those numbers have dropped off considerably. In this case, we're basically dropping off items as opposed to doing actual story times at daycare centers and the like, because of the pandemic. And still, in spite of that, the number of participants in the outreach programs is still very respectable. That's close to 70, more than 70 participants in those outreach programs. And then number of programs in outreach, 98 for youth services compared to 227, and the number of participants, more than 2,400. Community engagement numbers are comparable to last year. In fact, they're identical to last year. And the number of contacts made is down given the virtual nature of those contacts. But we're still engaging our community partners, which is good to keep those connections. And then taking a look at web and social media, the number of websites visit is down slightly compared to last year, still very respectable. And the number of Facebook reaches is down by about half. On the other hand, our Instagram impressions are up by almost 150% compared to last year. Twitter impressions are down by about 60. So it's, pick your social media. It's either up or down as a reflection of the different ways in which we're engaging with the community. YouTube views, which are new for this year, is a very respectable, more than 9,000 for the month of July alone. To think about that, That's more than 3,000 visits or views per day. So it's a very respectable number. And speaking of volunteers, John, in response to your question, our intrepid volunteer manager, Jennifer Johnson, has found extremely creative ways to keep our volunteers engaged virtually in a variety of ways. And so they actually logged 750 hours in the month of July, doing a variety of tasks and activities in a virtual realm. So that's yet another way that we're keeping engaged with our all-important volunteers. And of course, your numbers, members of the Library Advisory Board, your participation also feeds into those numbers. So thank you for helping us maintain those numbers. Our collection size, the number of items added to the collection is a bit down by about 25% compared to last year, which should not come as a surprise since we're doing all that, we're doing much of that work virtually. So cataloging, processing, some of that is actually happening, when I say virtually, I mean remotely. So some of that work is actually being done in the homes of our staff. And kudos to Michelle Caldwell, our materials and operations manager, who has actually been delivering some of those items to staff at their homes. Other staff, and some of them have been dividing their time between working remotely and on site. And then in terms of the number of items withdrawn from the collection, as you would imagine, the numbers are significantly less compared to last year, simply because a lot of that work is being done remotely as opposed to on site. And then our total holdings compared to last year is down by about 1%. Speaking of holds, now that the county has turned holds notifications back on and ability to place holds back on, those numbers have gone right back up and down only by about a little bit more than 10% compared to last year, which is very respectable under the circumstances. And take a look at the number of holds picked up at BCL. They've actually increased by almost 5% compared to last year. And when you think about the amount of work that goes on behind the scenes to make that happen, every one of those items that has to be picked up, that means they're being delivered at the curbside, which means that a staff member is going and pulling all of those items from the shelf and then bundling them and hand delivering them at the curbside. So there's a tremendous amount of labor that goes on for each one of those books that are being delivered at curbside. And remarkably, those numbers are actually up compared to last year.
Well, it isn't entirely remarkable because it's sort of not analogous, because this year, every single item that's getting checked out is being held. Whereas last year, there would have been people picking their own materials off the shelf.
Precisely. So when I think about that, it's mind-blowing to think that we're actually increased the number of holds picked up compared to last year. So just a testimony to the hard work and the efficiency of your Beaverton City Library staff.
Yeah, kudos to the library staff. They're doing a very good job. We want to all thank you.
Yes.
Say thank you for them and keep up your work.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll be happy to pass it along to the staff. I know that will mean a great deal to them, as it does to me. Circulation. So adult circulation is, circulation across the board for physical items is down, no surprise. That's to be expected under the circumstances. However, when you look at circulation of e-content, those numbers all across the board have increased. Again, no surprise. With the total increases being in the neighborhood of about 50% compared to last year, which is also remarkable. in terms of the actual numbers. So no surprise that they're going up. By the fact that they're going up by 50% is, I think, remarkable. So again, I think the staff gets some credit for that, for making it easy for members of the public to access digital materials by revamping our website and making it more intuitive for members of the public to find digital resources such as ebooks and audiobooks. We have been continually revamping the library website in order to provide up-to-date information and to streamline the process and make the site more intuitive as we are interacting with our service population in a more virtual environment. So I want to acknowledge the work of the staff. And I'd like to continue and stop sharing the statistics and go back to the rest of the report, if I may. I think I shared with the board last time that recommendation that actually came out of the library for the creation of a citywide child care task force to help City of Beaverton employees with their child care needs. And I'm proud to say that Jennifer Johnson, again, our volunteer manager, is a co-coordinator along with a colleague in the community development department leading that team. There are representatives from every city department, including public works, police, finance, community development, mayor's office, library, etc. On that team. And they will be presenting a report with their recommendations to the city department heads for consideration. And just earlier this week in the department heads meeting, the mayor instructed the city's finance director to work with his counterparts at the county to identify any and all available funds that we might be able to provide for City of Beaverton employees to help them with their childcare needs so that the important work of the city can continue across all departments. Cannot recall if I mentioned this the last time, forgive me if I did. The library's cultural awareness training team is in the process of morphing into a diversity and equity team or committee, and they are referring, which will be referred to as the Anti-Racism Action Committee, which will be taking the lead role in helping the library to advance its equity work. And this will be in conjunction with this type of work, that equity work that is being done across all city departments in conjunction with the city's internal equity team. And there's a variety of initiatives that are being launched to help advance that work. And so we're very happy to be part of a citywide effort to help make the library a more equitable place, starting with our staff, members of color, to help not only recruit but also retain BIPOC members of our staff, and also looking at other ways we can make the library truly more equitable for the residents and members of the community that we serve. And then finally, just some quick updates in facilities. Waiting to hear back from facilities department, or division rather, about the next steps in the process to build out the library study rooms. The drawings have been approved by the city's engineering division, and now we're just awaiting word on next step about going out, whether we need to go out to bid, or if we just can solicit bids from three construction companies to do that work. So stay tuned on that. City has identified funds to update the library's HVAC system, which is in need of some repairs. So there'll be a multi-year process, the first year of which will be to bring all the control systems online in the following year to do some maintenance to bring the system fully up to speed. And as reported at last week's all-staff meeting, the library will be receiving a new replacement or an upgrade rather to its drinking fountain in the lobby, replacing the fountain with a unit that also can be a bottle filling station. So it'll be a combination of drinking fountain and water bottle filling station. So it's not an insignificant upgrade, several $1,000s to do that. But we recently received word that we got approval for that, and that will be happening. Kristin, do you recall, did Michelle mention a date for that? I can't recall off the top of my head.
She did.
That work will...
Yeah, she didn't, but it's coming. We're all very excited, but we're not certain when.
Okay, sometime in the future. I'll keep this board apprised. The significance of that is that while the library is closed to the public, patrons who are taking advantage of our computer lab service do have access to the bathrooms in the lobby as well as the drinking fountain. So that will be an important service that we'll be able to provide at least some members of our community in the near future. So that concludes the update, and I would be happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
I've got a couple. One, you mentioned about Corvallis actually delivering books to people's homes. And I know WCCLS has long had a program for getting materials, especially to homebound elderly people. And I think they're mailing most recently. Correct. Anyway. That is correct. And yes. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that, because I don't remember much.
That service, to my knowledge, John and Kristin, feel free to jump in if I'm misspeaking, has been historically a mail service that's been provided through the mail. They actually suspended that at the beginning of the pandemic out of concerns about spreading the virus to potentially vulnerable populations. They recently restarted the service. I have not heard about any plans to modify or transform that service into an actual home delivery service in terms of using, for example, fleet vehicles, which is what Corvallis is doing. So they are not only using City of Corvallis library fleet vehicles, but they are also repurposing other City of Corvallis fleet vehicles that are not being used as a result of the pandemic and calling them into service to provide their homebound delivery service. So it remains to be seen in what capacity they'll be able to continue that service post-pandemic once the fleet vehicles are being utilized by other City of Corvallis departments. So I don't know if they'll have to scale that back, or maybe they'll invest in additional fleet vehicles. I haven't heard any word on that and on their plans for that.
Well, mail sounds certainly more cost effective. Also, on the study rooms, and maybe you mentioned this and I somehow missed it. Is the construction continuing right now?
So the project is proceeding, and as I mentioned, the drawings have been approved by engineering. The city has hired a project manager, Yost Groom, I can't remember the H, it's YGH is the initials, of the local architecture and design firm, which has been hired to manage the process. So they developed the drawings. They're also going to take the lead on the bidding process and work with the winning bidder on the actual construction itself.
Okay, any other questions for Glenn? Any other questions about anything?
It seems it's a very quiet day.
Couldn't hear you.
It seems it's a very quiet day today.
It is an unusual day all around, I think, between the pandemic and the fires and the wind.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling kind of disoriented.
Same here. So after after Monday, heavy wind and the fire started. I can't believe that Oregon had a wildfire, and 48 places there is a small fire going around. It is not much of a, I don't know, I'm feeling very low today.
Well, it's good to have this human contact. It's good to see everybody's face, and I hope everybody can stay inside as much as possible until the air clears, especially those of you with children. Glenn?
John, I just wanted to mention that that's something we're monitoring closely in terms of the air quality, and also the temperatures tomorrow are expected to be in the mid-90s. So, for example, when the air quality dropped on Sunday, we asked the supervisors who at the curbside service to make sure that we were keeping the door to the outside closed, which we had been in the habit of propping open to make it easier for staff to deliver items to the curb. But because of the drop in air quality, we made the decision to close the door to preserve the quality of the air inside for staff. And we also checked in with the manager and supervisor to see if we needed to scale back the hours of the service for staff health and safety. They determined that since the staff are not outside for an extended period of time, and since we rotate the staff who go and deliver books to the curbside, that they felt that we could provide a full service on Sunday, and same for today. And then for tomorrow, we're going to be monitoring the heat index and making any adjustments as necessary to preserve staff health and safety at the curbside. So I just wanted to bring that matter to this board's attention to let them know that we are keeping a close watch on that, and staff health and safety, of course, is one of our highest priorities.
Of course. Well, that makes a whole lot of sense. And very, very fortunately, the pickup is on the west side of the building, so it's fairly sheltered from the wind there.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Good.
Glenn, for doing so. So yeah, health and safety of the staff is very important for us.
Absolutely. I think we all agree with that.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I was asked to bring up as far as recruitment goes was to talk about things we might be doing in the future. And as a board, I think this is kind of an impossible time to do that. We not only put things on hold that we would have done in recent months, but we really suspended them. For example, we had been hoping early in the spring to take an extended look at circulation and compare with other libraries. And now I think that's moot because everything has been disrupted and trends are now without meaning. We're starting from scratch in so many ways. So I feel like everything is somewhat on hold, and that we our best strategy in the short run is to do what Glenn has been doing a really good job of, which is keeping us informed of what's going on. so that we can share that with other people. We do, as the recruitment and our mission statement mention, we do lobby for the library. And I know the last, I guess, next to last meeting we had, I think, we had the WCCLS presentation, and we talked about the upcoming levy. And you know, I went to my NAC meeting and actually got to promote it entirely legally, because fortunately, just because I was there and I don't go all that regularly, the NAC chair asked me what's going on with the library, and I was able to talk about everything, the updates to the Library of Things at the time, and some of the programs we had, and the TriMet thing, and all of that, and the levy. So it worked out very well. But yes, if you're interested in joining the board, again, please contact Glenn. If somebody has something in particular that you can think of now, or before the next meeting that you'd like to discuss or learn more about, this is really a good time for us to do that. I think, again, some of the things that we would have been doing, we certainly would have been involved in the budget process, as again, our mission says we're supposed to. That's going to be on hold while the city is semi-closed. Anybody have anything? Well, like Sarah said, we're really quiet tonight.
Yeah.
In that case, there being no further business, our next meeting will be, computer calendar here, will be October 14th, because the 30th is a Wednesday, so we meet the last possible day, so not till mid-October. And again, if we are contacted by candidates for office or ballot measure, we'll be willing to entertain having them at our next meeting, I think. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Okay, I'm going to call the meeting adjourned at 7:29. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks much.
Night.
Be well, be safe.
Yeah, be safe.
Be safe.
Thank you, Kristin.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's good to see y'all.
Okay, nice to see you, everybody.
Bye.